Hi, once again, everybody. Gun on One is up and running. It is brought to you by the Inside the Birds Network. I'm Derrick Gunn. Only two teams remaining in the NFL, and they will clash in Super Bowl 59. They have been there before a few years ago. Your Philadelphia Eagles and the Kansas City Chiefs. This is a special Gun on One, so I had to bring in somebody special. He's a legend. He's a myth. He's the nicest guy you ever wanted to meet in the world. He's an accomplished author, an accomplished playwright. Everything he does makes me feel that much smaller because I've accomplished nothing in my life compared to my friend Ray Didinger. Ray, how you doing, man?
I'm doing great, Gunner. How are you making out?
Good, man. Good to see you. You know, we in the media, Ray, when we analyze games and stuff, we play the scenarios over in our mind over and over and over again, and we come up with 20 different angles how games could play themselves out. Did you ever think in your wildest imagination the Eagles would put a beat down on Washington like this in the NFC Championship game?
No. I thought they would win.
Yeah.
But I thought it would be very close and scary, because Washington was playing very well, and a lot of people are saying, oh no, we got the home field advantage. Well, Detroit saw what the home field advantage meant for them. Nothing. I mean, this team was red hot with a red hot young quarterback and playing just loose and, daring, and I thought they were a really scary opponent for the Eagles. I really did. I thought the Eagles would find a way to win, but I thought it was going to be close and, edge of your seat kind of in the last 2 or 3 minutes sort of thing, which, given the way Washington's season unfolded, that was the story of their season. They kept it close, and when they win a half a dozen games in the last 2 minutes.
Yeah.
And I kind of thought this was going to be that kind of game. But, the fact that the Eagles dropped a 55 on them and had the game pretty much wrapped up early in the fourth quarter was very surprising to me.
Washington opens the game with an 18-play drive to get 3 points out of it. Eagles get the ball back. One play, 18 seconds later, boom. Saquon is gone 60 yards, brought the house down. Ray, as we sit here, I think as we look back at what Saquon has done on this team for 2024, rejuvenated is an appropriate word, I think, but I think it's an understatement to say he has been anything less than super. We knew he would be good with this offense, but Ray, from my perspective, he's exceeded anything I ever thought he would do with the Philadelphia Eagles offense.
Yeah, I think you and I view it the same way. I mean, I thought he would be very good. I thought he would have a big impact, and I thought he would have it right away. And I thought he was going to give this team something it had not had in a very long time. And I really thought that he was going to become the centerpiece, the focal point of the offense. I thought all of that. But did I see 2,000 yards coming? No. Did I see 255 in one game coming? No. Did I see 205 coming in a playoff game, breaking Van Buren's record? No. I set the bar pretty high, and he just soared over it backwards. I just thought he's been tremendous. Now I know, I'm sure he's not going to win MVP. I'm sure it's going to go to a quarterback, probably Josh Allen. And I can't really argue with that. I mean, Josh Allen had a great year. But boy, you talk about a most valuable player. You talk about a guy that changed the whole face of a football team and a city, really. That's what he did. I mean, you think about how this, where this team came from at the end of last year, out of that utter collapse down the stretch last year, when after that Tampa Bay playoff loss, I mean, you didn't know where this team was headed. Right. I mean, there was real thought that the head coach might get fired. There was talking about a major house cleaning, and to come into this season and turn it into what it's turned into is pretty remarkable. And I think that the biggest part of it, you can credit a lot of people here, but I think it really starts with Saquon Barkley. I think he just changed the entire culture of this team, just one guy. And, when you were talking about the 60-yard bolt that he used to start this game, it just sitting there watching it, it just reminded me so much of Wilbert Montgomery's run against the Cowboys in 1980. Because that was Same thing. NFC Championship game, cold day at the vet. The fans, stadium was rocking. And they hand the ball off to Wilbert. Goes through the line, 42 yards, touchdown, game set match. When I saw Barkley break into the open in this game and head straight to the end zone, the only thing I could think of was, wow, this is Wilbert Montgomery all over again. And just like with Wilbert, that sort of set the table for what followed. And, at this point, every time you think you've seen the best that this guy can do, he comes out and tops himself. I can't wait to see what he's got waiting for us at the Super Bowl.
I'm so glad you brought up the name Wilbert Montgomery, because on our Parks Casino postgame show that I do with Seth Joyner and Mark Farzetta, we field questions from the chat. We take 3 or 4 questions from the chat and talk about them. And one of the questions we took was, is Saquon Barkley the greatest Eagles running back ever? And so you, knowing the history of this team inside and out, I think it's the appropriate question to ask you. Is he the greatest Eagles running back ever, or is it still a bit premature to even talk about such a thing?
I think it's a little premature to talk about the greatest ever running back. I think that's a little too soon. I think what you could say, Van Buren was he led the league in rushing 4 times in 5 years. He was the entire offense for a team that won back-to-back world championships. He was scoring. He was getting 1,000 yards and scoring 15 touchdowns with a 12-game season. He did stuff that nobody had ever done before. The 1,000-yard season was unheard of until he came along. So, if you look at his entire body of work, I think you kind of have to say, yeah, and I have always contended, even though this team has had a whole succession of really, really good backs. Going through, you mentioned Wilbert, you mentioned Timmy Brown, you mentioned LaShawn McCoy, obviously their all-time leading rusher, Deuce Staley, Ricky Waters, Brian Westbrook. All of these guys were outstanding running backs. But I've always said, I know it's back before. There's nobody out in the audience that ever saw him play. But if you just look at his career and what he accomplished, I always contended Van Buren was the best. And right now, what I would say is, I think until proven otherwise, I would still give the edge to him. However, if this team goes on and wins the Super Bowl this year, and Saquon Barkley has his usual hand in that victory, I think it'll be fair to say that this would be the greatest season by any Eagles running back, topping even the best of Van Buren. Now, to move him past Van Buren, you would probably have to do it multiple times like he did. But I think you could probably say if he finishes it out, if he finishes this year the way he has been up to this year, and, we have another parade out to the art museum, I think it's fair to say that this is the greatest season by any Eagles running back. And even those of us that thought it was a great signing, and even those of us that thought he was going to come in here and do great things, I don't think any of us thought it was going to be this. This has been truly extraordinary.
You mentioned the MVP race a short while ago, and it's hard to fathom that a 2,000-yard rusher, one of only 9 in the history of the NFL, would be omitted from that conversation, and basically it's going to be given to a quarterback. And I've always said, why is it such a quarterback-driven award? Adrian Peterson's the last running back to win the award. A 2,000-yard running back doesn't come along very often, and people want to put Josh Allen on that pedestal. I get it. But if you look at number by number, Lamar Jackson had 34 touchdowns and only 3 interceptions in a regular season. I'm surprised he wouldn't be considered a candidate. But why do you think it's such a quarterback-driven award when you've had some incredible performances historically by running backs like Saquon Barkley and wide receivers for that matter?
I just think it's a mindset. That's a quarterback's game. It's a quarterback's league. It's a quarterback's era. And people just go with that. And without ever actually looking at it and saying, not every year is the same. Some years are different than others. I thought you could have made a great case in any of the years when the New York Giants won Super Bowls back in the day that Lawrence Taylor could have been your MVP. I mean, you talk about a guy who was the most valuable player on the team that won the championship. There's no question of what those Giants teams, they didn't do it with their offense. They did it with their defense, and their defense started with number 56. So, but he got Defensive Player of the Year, but he was never really seriously considered for an MVP. But he should have been. But I think that when you look around the league this year, I think one of the things, even though I don't think he's going to win the MVP, I'd love to see him do it, but I don't think he will. But one of the things that I think that Saquon has done is, and Derrick Henry too, is I think they've made people around the league rethink this notion of the fact that, oh, it's not really about running backs, or, you're foolish to try and build your offense around running backs. It's not about it's not about the running game anymore. I think you're seeing this year that the two biggest impact free agents in the whole league this year were Saquon Barkley and Derrick Henry.
Absolutely.
What they did with their teams, and they're both running backs. And there was a time when, teams would just, we're not spending money on a running back. Are you kidding? Nobody would do that. Well, this year the Eagles in Baltimore made big time investments in two running backs, and look what it did for them. With the Ravens, it got them to the Final Four, and with the Eagles, it's getting them to the Super Bowl and maybe to win the whole thing. So I think this notion that, the devaluing of the running back, the overlooking of the running back, the not paying the running back, I think maybe this season, for people that are fair-minded and are willing to just sort of look beyond the obvious, I think they have to recognize that, the right running back in the right situation can make you a champion. And I think that's what we're on the verge of seeing here with the Eagles.
Jaylen Herz, NFC Championship game, 20 of 28, efficient numbers, not wow numbers, but he doesn't turn the ball over. He makes the big throws when he has to. What is your assessment of Jaylen? What has been your assessment of Jaylen this season? Because there's so many people who straddle the fence in terms of whether or not they like him, they don't like him, they respect his game, they still think he has a lot of flaws in his games. I in all the time that I've been here covering the Philadelphia Eagles, Ray, and this even includes Donovan McNabb, who I still think is the greatest Eagles quarterback of all time, until further notice. I've never seen so much indifference about a quarterback who has led a team to so many wins in one season.
Yeah. I've always he's an unusual case in that respect. He's an unusual case. He's never going to lead the league in yards. He's never going to lead the league in touchdown passes. He's never going to be that statistical guy, But if you look around, who would you rather have? Who are the quarterbacks that had big statistical years? Jared Goff, Justin Herbert. Would you rather have them or this guy? This guy who wins all the time. I remember doing it when I was at NFL Films, doing an interview with Terry Bradshaw. And Bradshaw, I was asking about how he saw himself in the pantheon of Hall of Fame quarterbacks. And he said, I know statistically I don't rank with those guys. He said, if you look at my overall passer rating or quarterback efficiency rating, however you measure it, I think Terry was like 88th or something. It was like, he was behind David Craig and Jimmy Garoppolo and all these guys. And meanwhile, he won 4 Super Bowls. And, and what Terry said was, in my view, him speaking, in my view, the only statistic that matters for a quarterback is winning games. Did you score touchdowns and did you win games? That's what it's about. It's not about completion percentage. It's not about average yards per attempt. It's not about your quarterback efficiency rating. It's, did you lead your team? Did you score points? And did you win games? And that's in his mind, that's how quarterbacks should be measured. And I thought, makes a lot of sense to me. I know a lot of guys, quarterbacks that I see, that complete, 70% of their passes, but they don't win anything. I'll give you a perfect example. Sam Bradford still has
Yes.
the Eagles' record for the highest completion percentage in a season. And what did he win? Nothing. So it's really about a quarterback's job is to go out and win games for his team. Whatever you got to do, you go out, you lead your team, you score enough points, you win the game. And Jaylen Herz does that, and he isn't always going to be flashy, and he certainly isn't going to put up spectacular statistical numbers. But if the measuring stick is winning games, then he's right there with the best of them.
Ray, when you look at this Eagles offense in its entirety, can you compare another Eagles offense that is as complete and as versatile as this offense is? Offensive linemen go down, another guy steps in, they don't miss a beat. Running back gets hurt, somebody else steps up, they don't miss a beat. Wide receivers down, somebody else, tight end, so on and so forth. Have you? In my time, I've been here since 1997. In my time, I can't think of a more complete, versatile offense than this particular Eagles offense. I defer to you. You've been around this team a lot longer than I have.
Yeah, not like this. Not like this. This is the best offensive line, in my view, that they've ever had. With some depth, you saw Sunday's game, look at it this year. You lose Jason Kelce, who's a first ballot Hall of Famer. And you figure, boy, how are you going to make up for that? Boy, that's going to be a big hole to fill. And it is, but you put Cam Jurgens in there, and it just keeps rolling, And then comes Sunday in a big game, Jurgens can't go, and you move Dickerson over from guard, you put Steen up at left guard, and you just keep rolling along. And you would credit Howie Roseman for drafting enough players to give you a really good front line with sufficient depth behind it if you lose injuries. And the other part of it is you give tremendous credit to Jeff Stoutland, the offensive line coach, who does such a wonderful job of preparing these guys, from week to week and developing them. When they come in, it's one of the things that I've never really, as long as I've been around the NFL, Derrick, I've never really understood how so many teams, they don't seem to understand how important it is to develop your players, to improve them. Everybody in high school, obviously, you're developing your players because they're kids and they don't know the game and you're trying to teach them. In college, you continue to develop them, but you draft them, you bring them to the NFL, and at a point, the coaches would sort of say, "No, they're here in the NFL now. We don't have to really teach them things now. We don't have to try to make them better." Well, yeah, you do. every day in practice, you're supposed to be trying to get better. And I've often been struck by when I watch and go around and watch different teams in training camp and watch different teams go through the drills, how they're teaching to the playbook, they're teaching to the plays, they're going through the routine, but they're not really working with these players to make them better, and I just don't understand that. But the really good teams do. They get guys in that are good players and they make them better, and not enough teams, I think, look at it that way. I don't know. It's because they feel like, they're pros. They don't want to be coached. They don't want coaches leaning on them. So, we'll just teach them the plays and we'll sort of give them the general idea, but we're not going to work them hard on the practice field from day to day like we would in college or high school because, they're pros now. No, if you get a guy, you can always make him better, no matter how good he is. Even if he's a Pro Bowl player, you can always make him better. And I think, Kelce is a great example of that. Kelce came in as a 6th-round draft choice and worked his butt off just to make the team. But then once he made the team, then he kept working until he was a Pro Bowler. And then even when he was a Pro Bowler, he kept working to be a better Pro Bowler, you know? And that's how, when he finished his career, he was, in my view, the best center this team's ever had, and that's coming in as a 6th-round draft pick. So I think that idea of good teaching, good development, taking in players and working every day to make them better. This team really believes in that. They really practice that. And I think it's one of the reasons why over this lengthy period of time, they have been very consistent. I mean, some ups and downs, but they've never had the huge highs and the huge lows. I mean, they have been right there with all the best teams for a very long time, and that's no accident.
Jaylen Carter. People are already comparing him to the likes of Jerome Brown. Aaron Donald has come out and said that it's time to pass the torch to Jaylen Carter. He is a special young man, but is he worthy right now? And he is phenomenal. Don't get me wrong. And I know people listening are going to try to twist and turn what I'm saying. There's no question he is a phenomenal talent, arguably the best D tackle in the game right now. But is it too soon to be comparing him to the likes of a Jerome Brown?
Yeah, probably. And Aaron Donald too.
Yeah.
I mean, those guys are at a different level. But could this kid be that? Yeah, sure. And I don't think it's that far off. If you just look at his improvement from last year to this year, from year one to year two, I mean, that level of improvement, if that's any indication if he makes a comparable improvement next year, now maybe we are having that discussion about, is he Jerome Brown? Is he Aaron Donald? Because I don't think he's that far away. I mean, last year, he started off really good. I mean, the first half of the season, in my view, he was the defensive rookie of the year. I mean, he was that good, I thought. Then the second half of the year, he tailed off along with just about everybody else. And when the coaches were talking after the season about things that they wanted to do differently coming into this year, one of them was it was really important that Jaylen Carter work harder on his conditioning, that he keep his weight down and he really work at his conditioning so that he wouldn't run out of gas the second half of the year. And boy, has he done that. I mean, if you look at him this year, I mean, he has sustained it through the whole season. And you look at the number of snaps he's playing. I mean, that's really remarkable. In a league where almost all defensive linemen, everybody's into this rotation thing where, guys are shuttling on and off and on and off so that you have guys fresh in the fourth quarter, which I totally get. But you look at this kid, I mean, he's playing practically the entire game. Yep. And he's still bringing it in the fourth quarter. I mean, listen, that Rams game.
Absolutely.
I mean, you're hanging by a thread there at the end of that game. I mean, the Rams have got the ball on the 12-yard line with a chance to maybe steal that game. And it's Jaylen Carter that closes the show. He comes in, he gets a sack. And then on fourth down, when everything's riding on this next play, he's the one that comes in and gets the pressure on Stafford and makes him throw incomplete. I mean, he saved that game for you at a point where he had played practically every snap and should have been sucking air. I mean, he's making the plays that really saved the game for you. I mean, that shows how much he's improved. And I also think that it shows a maturity now that he's developed now that he understands that this is professional football and you're responsible for those things. And I also think he realizes that he has that stature now, that he is viewed as that level of player. And I think he wants to keep playing to that, but he has that kind of ability. And listen, if they're going to win this game down in New Orleans, if they're going to beat the Chiefs, they're going to need Jaylen Carter to have a very big game.
How did Vic Fangio do it, Ray? How did he assemble this group of young men to be as dominant as they are and have been on defense? Basically, since the bye week is when they really began to emerge.
Yeah, well, I think what Vic has always, and I've known Vic since he was coaching for the Stars back in the USFL back in the 80s when he was on Jim Mora's staff. And he's always been this kind of coach. He's always been a very smart defensive coach, a very, very smart defensive strategist. And the thing that he does is everybody says, well, he has this Fangio system. He plays this shell defense, take away the big play, don't give up the explosive play, that he plays the deep coverage. Fundamentally, that's true, but he doesn't do it every play. He doesn't do it in every snap and every situation. He will change up just often enough during a game to keep the opposing quarterback off balance, just so that he doesn't feel like, and boy, this is really true with Mahomes. If Mahomes knows what you're playing and he's got your coverages down and he can read the blitzes and he comes up the line of scrimmage and pre-snap, he knows what you're doing and he knows where he wants to go with the ball, then you have no chance. Then you have no chance to beat him. What you have to do is, as hard as it is to do, you have to vary things. You have to surprise them. You have to come up with some new things. You have to make the right call in the right situation. And it's easier said than done, especially when you're going up against a guy like this who's the best at what he does. But that's what Vic's going to have to do here. He's going to have to figure out some plan of attack that's going to incorporate some things that maybe he hasn't even shown before, but some things he's sort of had up his sleeve all along that maybe he can use in this situation. And in some 3rd and 6 situation, come in with a slot blitz or a corner blitz or a safety, shooting up the middle or something like that he hasn't shown before that can actually catch Mahomes by surprise and maybe force him into a big mistake. Because he's not going to make a mistake on his own. You're going to have to force him into doing it. And it starts with a quarterback. It starts with a defensive coordinator who can make that kind of call. And that's what Vic does. The other thing is, you talk about how they improved after the bye. I think that what really happened was, everybody talks about the young players on the team and, Mitchell and DeJean, how good they are. And they are. They're really good young players. They had to learn the playbook. They had to learn the system. They had to learn the NFL way of doing things, which is true. But there's a flip side to that. And that is that the coach who's calling the plays, he has to learn about them. They have to learn about the coach and what he wants them to do, but the coach has to learn what they can do and what they're good at. And I think that what you saw there was it took 4, 5, 6 weeks before Vic figured out what the real strengths of a lot of these guys are. Like Bond, a guy he didn't really know much about, like DeJean, who missed most of training camp with the hamstring injury. Like a lot of these guys that I think it took him a little while to find out what their strengths were, what their weaknesses were, and then begin to build the defense around those things. And that's when it all started to come together. And what you had by the end of the year was the number 1 defense in the NFL, which pretty amazing when you look back at where they were when last season ended, they were, in my view, by the end of the year, they were the worst defense in the league. They couldn't cover, they couldn't tackle, they couldn't do anything. And to think that team in 1 year's time could now be the number 1 defense in the league playing for a Super Bowl championship, to me is an amazing testimonial to how good Fangio is.
Right. This defense's ability to take the ball away is uncanny. They took the ball away from Green Bay, won the game. Rams won the game. And, of course, Washington hadn't turned the ball over all playoffs. They get 21 points off of 3 Washington fumbles.
Right.
A lot of teams teach punching the ball out. They have perfected the art of punching the ball out and generating turnovers for their offense.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of aspects to that. You look at the takeaways, which are big part of winning games in the NFL now. Absolutely. But it's one thing to take the ball away, but you also have to do something with it.
Yes.
You also have it's fine to take the ball away, but you got to turn those into points for you too. The Eagles a few weeks ago against Washington took the ball away 5 times and got like nothing out of it, and you wound up losing the game. If you turn those turnovers into scoring and the points for you, that game's over in the 3rd quarter. But the fact was, you miss, get a field goal, you punt a couple times, you're stopped on downs, and all of those great opportunities, you get nothing out of them. That's how you lose games. What's happening now in the postseason is they're getting turnovers and they're capitalizing on them. And that's certainly what you saw this week. And that's what it's going to take to win this game. The only problem is the Chiefs don't turn the ball over, man. They just don't. Now, the Eagles in the postseason, if my numbers are correct, I think they're plus 10 just in the postseason, which is a lot for just 3 games to be plus 10 already. And if you go back, remember at the start of the year when after that disaster in Tampa, when they lost down in Tampa in week 4, they were minus 6 then.
Yep.
Since then they're plus 27. So it is a total reversal. And that kind of opportunistic play by your defense can win you a championship if the offense does its part and takes those opportunities and cashes them into points.
Right. Who do you give more credit to for the success of this team? Howie Roseman for assembling this team, or Nick Sirianni for being the orchestrator of the coordinators, assistant coaches, and the talent on the field itself?
I hate to split the baby here, but I think I would. I'd give credit to both those guys because they both did what you said. I mean, Howie built the roster, and I really think if you look at it top to bottom, it's the best roster in the league. It really is. I know the Chiefs are back-to-back world champs. I know the Chiefs are going for the three-peat. I know all of that, and I respect the hell out of them for what they've accomplished. But if you ask me to stack the two rosters up next to each other and match them up unit by unit, I think the Eagles have more talent on this team. I really do. So that's Howie. I mean, he went out and had a terrific draft, made the spectacular free agent signing of Saquon Barkley, and then the other free agent signing, which nobody thought a thing about, and it turned out to be a big one in Zach Bond. And he also did some stuff where he extended some younger players' contracts, which is an underappreciated but very important role for a general manager. Take some of your younger players that are good players that you feel are going to be part of your future and extend their contracts now, and get them at a good price, fair. I mean, you're not underpaying them, but don't let it play out to a point where you could lose them. If you really feel like this guy is a core player for your team moving forward, then get him locked up. And Howie does that too. He did all of that in the course of building this roster, and he did a great job. I mean, he's already been NFL Executive of the Year twice. And I mean, you could easily give it to him again this year. Now, I don't think they will. I believe they've already given it to the Detroit general manager, which, okay, I get. I mean, he's done a good job with that team. But I mean, Howie's won the award twice, and to me, this was his best year. So I would give him credit, but I also have to give tremendous credit to Nick Sirianni for all the scrutiny he's been under and all the criticism of him. Some of it warranted. I mean, some of the things he's done strategically, some of the calls that he's made, some of the decisions he's made in games are certainly open to question. But the one thing that I think is really true is he has the thing that every successful coach has to have, and that is the trust of his players. I think the players, even though Nick is unconventional in many ways, and he comes off as sort of a little wacky sometimes, frankly. I mean, nobody's ever going to confuse him with a Chuck Noll or a Don Shula, but he connects with this group of guys. They listen to him, they believe in him, they trust him, and they go and play for him. And that's the foundation of building a winning team, and Nick's been able to do that.
Yeah, they're going to get another chance at the Kansas City Chiefs to redeem themselves in a Super Bowl. Look at this particular Chiefs team, and there's a lot of time, as we sit here now on this podcast, there's a lot of time between right now when this game is going to be actually played. But this Chiefs team fascinates me in this sense. They have played 19 games this year. 11 of those games they've won by one possession. All 11 games that were one-possession games, the Kansas City Chiefs have won. They're not as dominant as they have been in the past when they've made their run to the Super Bowl. They're not putting up these wow numbers. Patrick Mahomes this season has not been that wow factor but they find a way to win, Ray. When you look at Kansas City and what Andy Reid / Patrick Mahomes have done with this team, what stands out to you about the way Kansas City has arrived at this point of the season?
The way they have changed, the way they have adapted, the way they have reinvented themselves. I mean, if you think to what the Chiefs were a couple years ago when they had Tyreek Hill, what an incredibly explosive offense that was. I mean, that was an offense that could score 40 on you in the blink of an eye. You know, they're not that anymore. You know, and so they've kind of changed their approach now. They don't have those dynamic down the field vertical threat kinds of players. Mm-hmm. They're more of a ball control, don't turn the ball over kind of team. They have some speed, but not great speed. And mostly now they're just a team that wins by not making mistakes, not turning the ball over, and playing really good defense. I mean, if you look over this whole year, you could fairly say that the defense carried this team a lot this year. I mean, the defense, I thought, this defense won them a lot of games. Steve Spagnuolo, who's been a top defensive coordinator in this league for a very long time, did a great job with the Chiefs last year, and he's done maybe even a better job this year. I mean, they are really defensively, they are really, really good. And that's what scares me a little bit as someone who's, talking from a Philly perspective about this game. I don't see any way this is going to be a one-sided game. I think it's going to be a very close game. I think it's going to be a fourth quarter game. And those are games that the Chiefs are very comfortable in because that's where they've been playing all year. I don't see the Chiefs blowing out the Eagles, nor do I see the Eagles blowing out them. Yeah. I think this is a game that's going to be in play well into the fourth quarter. And as from an Eagles standpoint, that scares me because the Chiefs are fine playing that game because they know how to play that game and they know how to win it. So that's going to be a real challenge. And, I've heard some people say, oh, Kelsey, he's not the same player that he was. He's old and he doesn't have the same. Look at the way he's been playing in the playoffs.
That's right. That's right.
I think, was he the same guy during the regular season? No. And the numbers reflect that. But now it's money time. And you can see, is he probably the player that he was 5-6 years ago? Probably not. But he is still a guy that in the big game, he's the guy that Mahomes is going to be looking to in a big situation. And he's done it often enough that he can still deliver. So they're one of the all-time great teams. There's no question about that. You look what they've accomplished. They rank with the Patriots. They rank with the Steelers of the 70s. They rank with the Packers back in the day. I mean, you talk about the great teams and the great eras. These guys are right there. I mean, the numbers tell you that. And so the Eagles, they can beat this team. But fully understand what you're trying to do here. You're trying to knock off a team that's one of the all-time great teams, and it is not going to be easy.
You and I have known Andy Reid a long time. Does it surprise you that he's still able to connect with today's younger player, which is a different mindset type of player in the National Football League? Now, Andy Reid is, 67, 68 years old. Does it surprise you that these players still gravitate towards, and I know winning has a lot to do with that. When you're a winning coach, it has a lot to do with how players want to perform for you. But Andy Reid still seems to be able to connect with these younger players up to date, which in some ways to me is mind-boggling that he has that kind of relationship like Nick Sirianni does with his players because Nick is a lot closer in age to these players nowadays.
Yeah, it is. It is sort of surprising that he's been around this long and that he still can relate, for the lack of a better term, to the younger generation of players, because clearly he does. A lot of it is, I mean, there's the whole dynamic of how a football team is built and how a football team works, the inner workings of it. It really begins with the head coach quarterback relationship. I mean, that's really where it all starts. If the head coach and the quarterback don't get along and don't trust each other, don't see the game eye to eye, it's going to be very hard to win in that situation because that's going to affect everything and it's going to affect everybody else on the roster. To really win, the coach and the quarterback have to be simpatico. And if you have that, you have a chance. And the relationship between Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes is rock solid. I mean, Andy loves this kid. He has from the day he traded for him. Yeah. And Patrick Mahomes trusts Andy, really likes Andy and knows, and Andy has taken him from being, let's face it, he was a losing quarterback in college.
That's right.
People don't even know that. I mean, you tell people, he had a losing record at Texas Tech. People say, no way. Yeah, he did. Yeah, he did. And you talk about a guy that came to the NFL with a lot of rough edges on his game. Yeah. He had him, boy. But Andy saw the raw talent that was there. And he took him and he just molded him into what he is now, which is, and has been for a while, the best quarterback in the NFL. And Mahomes knows that. And he knows that, Andy has taken him from what he was to what he is. And so he trusts Andy totally. And Andy really likes the kid. And he's a tough kid who, for all of his success and all of his wealth, he's a winner. I mean, he just wants to go win. And I don't really think he worries. And he's this year, a couple times, he was asked about statistically, you're not putting up as many touchdowns as you did before. Your stats aren't what they were. He didn't even make the Pro Bowl, as if that matters. And he was asked about that. He said, I don't care. We're winning. We have the best record in the league. I don't care about that kind of stuff. So he's accepted that kind of attitude here. And that's why he and Andy both see this all the same way. It's all about winning championships. And over the last 5-6 years, nobody's done it the way they have.
I can sit here and talk football with you until the cows come home, as they say. But to get away from the X's and O's before I let you go, because I promised I wouldn't keep you forever, I wanted to talk to you about something on a more personal note. Your play, Tommy and Me. It's still in production. Where is it, and how is it doing right now?
It is still in production. We are still running at the People's Light Theater in Malvern, a great theater right there off of Lancaster Ave in Malvern. And we opened on January the 7th, and we are still running, and we will be there through this weekend. We will finally close on Saturday with 2 shows. But the demand for tickets was so great that they extended it for a whole week. We were supposed to close a week ago, but there were so many people that wanted to buy tickets, they added another week to our run. So we're going to be there through Saturday. And Derrick, it's done great. I mean, the play, you asked me before we started recording, how long have you been doing it? It's 9 years now. Wow. We did this play for the first time in 2016, and here we are 2025, and we're still doing it. It's pretty amazing. And it's just been a great chapter in my life. It's something I never foresaw. I certainly never thought that I would be a playwright, but I had the opportunity. I had this wonderful story in my life, this relationship I had with Tommy McDonald that started, with me as a 10-year-old kid, just walking up to him one day at training camp and asking for his autograph, and him handing me his helmet and saying, come on, let's walk to the field together. And from that grew a friendship that lasted for 40 years and ended up with me being his presenter at the Hall of Fame. So it was such an extraordinary story that I just felt like I need to share this story with people. It's such a great story. I just need to share it with people. So I sat down and did something I had never done in my life, which is write a play. And here we are. We're still doing it all these years later. And, we're just getting to wrap up another wonderful run. And the people at People's Light Theater are already talking to us about coming back next year.
Oh, my goodness.
So we have, I think this play is going to continue on, Derrick, and I'm happy to say that.
Well, I can honestly say it's a phenomenal play. I had a chance to see it, and I was honored when I saw it that you asked me to be a part of a panel discussion after the play was over. Do you have a definitive timetable in terms of how long you want it to run, or are you just going to let it run its course until the play itself and the interest in the play itself plays itself out, so to speak?
I think that's probably true. As long as there are people, as long as there are theaters that want it, I'd like to keep it going. We have a gentleman, a documentary filmmaker, is in a process right now of making a documentary film about the Tommy and Me story. That is now underway and will probably be finished. I was just talking to him today. That'll probably be finished around the end of April. And there's a producer out in Hollywood that has a screenplay, a Tommy and Me screenplay, and he's out there trying to get it made into a movie. So, I mean, who knows where this is going to go? But to your point about, did I have any idea we'd still be talking about this all these years later? No. But it's a wonderful thing. And the McDonald family, Tommy passed in 2018.
Yeah.
But his family, his kids, his children, and his grandchildren, they come back every year to support the play and be part of the play. And, what the play has meant to them is really one of the most gratifying things about it as far as I'm concerned.
There he is, ladies and gentlemen, Hall of Fame writer, incredible author, even more incredible playwright, but most importantly, a Hall of Fame person. And I'm honored to call him my friend, Ray Didinger. Thank you so much for giving me time on this edition of Gun on One.
Always a pleasure to be with you, Gunnar, and always a pleasure to talk football with you, especially in a year like this.
Whoa, what a year it has been, my friend.
Can't
wait to see the outcome of Super Bowl 59. All right, that's going to wrap up this edition. Yep, that's going to wrap up this edition of Gun on One, powered by the Inside the Birds Network. For my friend and Hall of Fame writer Ray Didinger, I'm Derrick Gunn. Until next time, so long, everybody.